he doesn't. We've done some independent research into it, and I don't want to disclose that at this point in time.
Totally fair. Is there anything you can say whether or not the person who wrote that note is somehow connected to Will Smith? I know can you say anything about that?
I can't say anything. I think that's going to be something that Discovery is going to bear out.
Okay.
And we're going to have to find out later in this case. I mean, we have our theories, we have our, beliefs, and I think you're spot on. By the way, that's the critical question in this, in tying it back, meaning, can we tie that back to Will Smith? But I think that there's a second option as well. That's just for the sexual harassment part of it. For the reporting, clearly it got back to Will Smith. I mean, that the reporting was reported to the tour manager, the right-hand man.
Is that Tim Miller, by the way? Is that Tim Miller?
Tim Miller.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, that's, I assume you're not asking about that, about the retaliation for the reporting. I'm assuming you're asking about, did he know that was in there? And then the question becomes, why is he retaliating for reporting? And that's the critical question here.
So I have a meta question. So let me first start with the Tim Miller part, because you brought it up. Based on that perceived alleged conversation, couldn't an argument be, and I understand your argument would be they didn't even properly investigate his claims, they didn't even look into it, they should have spoken to at least hotel security, that wasn't done, that was the minimum that was required. I imagine based on the complaint, Tim Miller would say either A, your client was let go because they decided to go in a different direction in terms of a violinist, or B, that they believe that he made all this up. Why, and if that's what's alleged in the complaint, why would Tim Miller claim that your client made up this whole Las Vegas hotel room incident?
Why would he claim? I have no idea why he would make that claim. I mean, that's something that we're going to have to bear out in Discovery. But that's precisely what goes to this concept of pretext, right? When something just doesn't make sense, when you're like looking at typically when an employee is hired to do a job and they're doing it well, the employer is happy with that employee and they want to continue employing them. They're making money off of them. And so at a certain point, if something happens and they just for weird reasons let go of the employee, you got to look back at the employer and say, is that the real reason they're doing this? Is there something else going on here? And so that's kind of precisely what we're going on with here, is that it just doesn't seem plausible that you would let somebody go for reporting this unless there was something bigger going on.
I guess the question is, do you know of anybody that would support Tim Miller? Like there were cast or crew who said, listen, I thought Joseph was making this up. Like, do you know of anybody that is going to come forward and say that? Because that seems to be, based purely on that conversation, that Tim Miller was told by someone or several people that this wasn't true. Unless you're saying this is completely, he doesn't have anybody.
I mean, all Tim Miller would have had to have done was call security at the hotel, and they would have pulled up the cameras, and you would see that it was true. That's it. It's very simple. So to say that it was being made up, I think I don't know if that's the argument they're going to make when we take Tim Miller's deposition. I don't know if that's what he's going to say, or he's going to say something else. But if that is what he says, I mean, why didn't you just do a quick call to the security department? These Vegas hotels have very tight security. Very tight.
I was going to ask you, did you have an opportunity to review the surveillance footage to see who may have entered your client's room?
We know that there's surveillance footage out there.
Ranger!
Okay.
Okay,
that's fair. That's fair. I just want to go back to Will Smith for a second. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one comment that was listed in the complaint, and this is an overarching claim of sexual harassment. To be clear, is your client alleging that Will Smith ever sexually harassed him or propositioned him in any way?
I don't think that's not the claim that's being made in our complaint right now.
100%, but the comment that Will Smith allegedly made to him was put there for a reason. Now, it was that comment that he allegedly made, and I believe there was even a reference to other unidentified comments that would give him rise to believe that whatever was left in his hotel room went to this claim of sexual harassment in a way.
Right. I think that remains to be seen. I'm not, again, I don't want to get ahead of my skis on that. Those are facts that are going to come out in Discovery. And you're asking me to kind of hypothesize on what may have happened in this case. And again, as an attorney, our job is to advocate for our clients, to figure out the facts. At this point, the only side of the story I know is from what my client tells me.
Sure.
We want to do the discovery. We want to get into the weeds of this case. We want to figure out exactly what happened, who was involved in this, and there's ways that we can figure that stuff out. And slowly by slowly, as things come out, we're happy to come back on and give you updates and let you know what we found. But I don't want to get ahead of my skis on this stuff.
Totally fair. Let me just ask you this. Was there another quoted comment that Will Smith allegedly made to your client that you know about that you could have included in the complaint? Because it was just that one, and I think there was reference to there were other comments that might have been made that were similar to that. Do you know if there were other comments that Will Smith allegedly made to your client in that vein?
Again, I'm not trying to be cheeky or anything like that. I actually don't recall if my client told me other things, or maybe I wasn't focused on it. It could be that I was made aware of other things and I decided not to put them in there. I wasn't hyper-focused on that issue. Just again, because when we're dealing with complaints, and sometimes we do leave stuff out of complaints because we want to prove them later. And in California, you don't need to specifically plead every little fact that's involved. So at this point, I don't recall why it was that I maybe only included that one statement. I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but I don't want to.
Totally fair. Totally fair. I was just curious.
Yeah.
What is your client hoping for at this moment? Is his goal to, what is his goal at the end of the day by filing this lawsuit, making this public, potentially taking this to trial? There's multiple causes of action. When you're dealing with these kinds of causes of action, there could be, quite a hefty damages award if this goes to trial. What is he looking for?
Look, my client, like all clients, that at the end of the day, they're not the ones who brought this. It's always, a lot of times people ask the plaintiff's client, well, you brought this lawsuit. No, we didn't. When the defendant acts in a certain way that's contrary to the law, the plaintiff has the right to bring a lawsuit to get justice. It's a better system than, other countries have where, justice is fought out with weapons or other things, right? This is the way that he gets to vindicate his right to be free from retaliation in the workplace, or to be free from sexual harassment in the workplace. These are the ways that he gets to retaliate. So, it wasn't he that made this public. They acted in a certain way towards him, which caused this lawsuit to happen. Now, what does he want? Like all clients, they want justice, right? They want whatever the law thinks is fair for them. And so in this case, we didn't even put a dollar figure in the complaint. We want the jury to decide on their own what they think that his damages were. And whatever his damages were, that's what he's looking for. I mean, he's not looking to hurt Will Smith or cause him any more unnecessary pain or suffering or anything like that. But at the end of the day, he wants justice for what happened to him. He had a career trajectory that was looking really good when he got hired for this tour, and everything went sour as soon as he reported this issue. So that's kind of, how do you make him whole? How do you come up with that number? That's something that a jury's really good at doing after listening to the evidence. But, we have a long ways to go till we get there.
And finally, before I let you go,
Sure.
There's a big part about this complaint about the harm that your client suffered, right? The financial harm, the emotional distress, the PTSD. What, if you can describe, what has life been like for him since his time on the tour ended?
It's kind of a hard thing for me to pinpoint or describe, but I could see it. There's, sometimes clients come to my office, and some clients, they've been terminated. In my practice, 98% of the people that call my office, I don't take their case. I'm a very, very selective attorney. I take very, very few clients. And when they come to my office and we talk about their case, and I get to see certain emotions depending on who they bring with them. Sometimes people bring people for support to the office. They'll bring a friend, they'll bring a mother, a brother, or a spouse. And you can kind of ask them and talk to them and say, how has he been after this situation? And I'll tell you, there's a range, there's a spectrum. And some people, they bounce back really quickly. They get fired from a job, no problem. 2 days later, they're on to another job and they're feeling good. And some people, go through a deep, dark depression. Losing a job, when somebody has a job, they think about hope and they think about the future and they think about how great life is. And when that gets taken away from you, especially when it's taken away from you in a way where you feel like it was unfair, it leaves a big hole. And some people have a harder time being resilient and bouncing back from that, and some people don't. And so a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, why doesn't he just get back up and find another job, do something else, move on with his life? That's easier said than done for some people. But we got to be sensitive to some other people who have it a little bit harder. For Mr. Joseph, from what I've seen, he's on the harder end of it. It really affected him for quite a while. And so obviously as time goes on, everything gets a little bit easier, the pain goes. But from the spectrum of clients that I see in my office, he was on the higher end, I would say.
Well, listen, Mr. Delshad, thank you for taking the time, breaking it down for us, coming on here. We'd like to continue the conversation as this case progresses, but I really, really appreciate it. You answer some more questions about this. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.
Trying to grab me. Let me check the.
A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York.
One of the most famous names in the hip-hop world is now facing 3 charges in federal court. Many people Drake is back in the headlines in all the wrong ways. This time, he's been named in a new federal class action lawsuit alongside streamer Aiden Ross. The main allegation? That money was used from an online gambling site to boost music streams. We have the complaint, we have the legal claims. We're going to break it all down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, before we go any further into this, there's something that we use here at Law and Crime that can be very, very useful to you. It's called Truth Finder. It is the powerful public records search service that we use to do research here on Law and Crime. But you want to talk about a useful resource, you plug in a name, you get address information, you get criminal history. And let me just say, this can give you some peace of mind. Truth Finder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And that includes looking up registered sex offenders in your area too. So stay informed, stay safe, check public records with Truth Finder now at truthfinder.com/LC-sidebar. All right, so Drake is back in the legal headlines, and this time he's named in a new federal class action lawsuit that was filed out in Virginia. And it makes some sweeping allegations about gambling and money movement and music streams. We're going to try to make this as simplified for you as possible, because it does get a little complicated. But the main allegation is really, really bad. It's really egregious. According to this newly filed complaint, the suit claims that Drake, along with very famous streamer Aiden Ross, and another person, that they didn't just benefit from allegedly inflated streaming numbers, which we'll talk about, but there's an allegation that they may have financed those allegedly artificial streams through an online casino. Okay, here's the basic theory of the case as alleged in the complaint that was obtained by Law and Crime. So you have 2 consumers who claim that they were drawn into what they essentially describe as a predatory, real money gambling environment on an online casino. This is after seeing promotions from Drake and Ross. From there, the lawsuit claims that money flowing through this platform wasn't just about gambling, but was allegedly routed in ways that supported broader schemes, including the artificial boosting of music streams. And this is where things escalate, because the plaintiffs aren't just alleging deceptive marketing. They are invoking federal RICO law. So basically, they're accusing the defendants of participating in an ongoing enterprise involving illegal gambling, concealed money transfers, and coordinated digital manipulation. The complaint points to things like the online casino's internal tipping system, a large public giveaway, high-dollar exchanges between the parties as examples, it says, or claims, how money was allegedly moved. and how that money was then allegedly funneled or used to fund botting and amplification campaigns behind the scenes. Now, to be clear, as we go through this, and I'll try to simplify it as much as possible, these are just allegations, okay? They're not proven facts. The lawsuit is in its early stages. Nothing has been decided or proven in court. None of the defendants have been found liable for anything, but the scope of these claims, the decision to frame them as a RICO case, remember RICO, Sean Diddy Combs? This is what makes this filing really stand out. So with all that in mind, I want to walk you through what this lawsuit actually alleges and what it would take to prove something like this in court. Okay, so to help us do all that, I want to bring on criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla as we go through each aspect of this lawsuit. First of all, so good to see you. Thank you for taking the time. Happy New Year.
Seeing you. Thank you so much.
Before we even go into the suit, aren't they essentially alleging a crime here? I mean, after reading a lawsuit like this, it wouldn't be the first time that you have a lawsuit that begins or maybe initiates a criminal investigation. But is that what they're alleging here, a crime? Could investigators begin to look into this?
Multiple crimes, and crimes including the online casino and their behavior towards their membership, their behavior towards the pool of people that they're advertising to, in addition to possible crimes involving Drake and the online casino, because I hear allegations that not only is this they're accusing the online casino of malfeasance when it comes to dealing with their own target audience regarding advertising, but when they're alleging that Drake used the online casino for help in misdirecting views or trying to artificially amplify his music or the viewership of his music to make it look like more people are listening to it than it will. And I think that's obviously a crime.
And to be clear, these are just allegations, right? Right. One thing can be alleged at a civil arena doesn't mean that it would precipitate a criminal investigation. But RICO, right. I mean, to sue under RICO for something like this, is that unusual? Because this isn't just about deceptive practices or misleading advertising or just consumer losses. They're alleging a criminal enterprise, essentially. How strange is it, or how often do you see someone filing a lawsuit under the RICO law?
Honestly, I don't see it that often. I don't think it's something that's used that often. However, in this particular instance, I think it may be appropriate considering the allegations. They're alleging, things that do spill over into the criminal arena. And I think that what is not new is when you see a civil litigation outline the crimes that were committed by the tortfeasors or by the defendants, because that's part of the job of the lawyer. I'm suing you for money in civil court, but I'm letting you know that I know the criminal behavior that you were engaged in. That's not extortion. I'm not extorting you. I'm not saying that I am not going to call the cops if you don't pay me money. I'm just letting you know that I'm suing you for malfeasance, for torts that you may have committed, for egregious behavior that you're engaged in, and I'm also letting you know, highlighting the fact that it is illegal. So that's something that's happening.
When you have a lawsuit, and we'll get into this in a minute, but I just want to actually continue with it. When you have a lawsuit that is high-profile figure, major artist, massive streamer, how does that affect the case, how it's litigated, what the negotiations are behind the scenes?
Well, number one, you know that they're going to come 100%. So you already know in advance that you're dealing with the type of person, because not only are we talking about, Drake, the YouTuber, but we're talking about the online casino. You already know that these are deep pockets. And what does that mean? That means that they have the money to put up the best defense that money can buy. So you must be aware that you are going to be challenged on everything. Jurisdiction, subject matter, maliciousness. You already know in advance that they're going to come with everything. Now, I'm assuming that they didn't play well when it comes to the pre-litigation phase, the demand letters. I'm assuming that's why this was filed, because the online casino and or the other defendants didn't want to resolve the case before it got filed. But for me, the main thing when you go against, high-profile celebrities, which I've done before in the past, is you must be aware that you are into it, which is important when you're taking that first step.
And what's different about this case is it's not just one or two people suing. So it's a class action lawsuit. I wanted to ask you about this. So the lawsuit was filed by two consumers, right? LaShawna Ridley, Tiffany Hines, but on behalf of the class, right? Those in the same position, namely those allegedly who were misled by defendants and induced into illegal gambling that they suffered. And they claim that there was use of this gambling website, this online casino. They lost money on the platform. They were influenced to sign up, keep playing after these promotions were seen from by Drake and streamer Aiden Ross. And they're suing this online casino along with Drake, Aiden Ross, and named George Wynn, who the complaint describes as an online operator involved in amplification and promotion campaigns. Mauricio, talk to me about why this is framed as a consumer class action rather than an individual dispute. Why do this? And how easy is it to get the court to agree to certify this as a massive class action lawsuit?
Right. Well, it's important because what you're doing is you're letting the defendant know, the online casino know, is that we're not only suing on behalf of these two people, we're opening it up to all the other people that have suffered because of your, actions, and then separate and apart from the actual litigation is the attorneys can look for other people. Now, what will happen is, when you ask how difficult is it to classify this as a class action, I don't think that it's going to be difficult based on what I've read. I think that it checks off a lot of the boxes that the courts are going to be looking for. And once that's opened up, then the actual attorneys can do a campaign of advertising to look for other people that have suffered the same, the same issues that the people that are putting up the actual class action. So they're going to look for people that have suffered the same damages, and then that opens up the amount of damages. So now we're not talking about just the damages of these two people, which could be limited to what they lost. We're talking about the damages of all the people that that lost money on this online casino, which just like any casino is going to be substantial. So it's a substantial financial risk for them.
And also from efficiency purposes, instead of having 50 different lawsuits alleging the same thing, you do it as one massive class action. So from there, let me get into this. The complaint lays out its core theory, right? And it starts with the online casino itself. So according to the lawsuit, this online casino is not what it claims to be. That's the allegation. The plaintiffs allege that it presents itself as a harmless, quote, social casino, while actually operating as a real money gambling platform that violates U.S. and Virginia law. The filing puts it like this, quote, the online casino, we're not going to mention the name of it, by the way, but the online casino was created and marketed to U.S. customers as a social casino that purportedly does not permit real money gambling to bypass applicable United States federal and state gambling regulations. And then the plaintiffs then explain how the platform allegedly works in practice, namely an illegal online casino of games and bets. They say that this online casino uses two virtual currency systems, gold coins and the online casino's cash. So gold coins are framed as play-only tokens. There's no monetary value. They can't convert it into real cash. But the online casino's cash, according to the complaint, that can be cashed out for real money or cryptocurrency. And the argument here seems to be that gambling is being disguised as gameplay, while users are still exposed to real financial loss. Mauricio, talk to me about what you make of that argument, and what you think might be the strength of this, how this might be able to be proven, or if you see any kind of deficiencies in it.
Well, first of all, if you look at this online casino and you look at the money it makes, the revenue it makes, I'm going to be able to gamble, for lack of a better word, that you're going to find out that the money that they're making is because people are gambling for real. The reason people gamble is because there is a financial interest at stake. People gamble because they want to win money. So even though I don't know anything about this online casino, I'm willing to bet that when you look at, you know, their financial structure, how much revenue they make in a year, they're making money because people are gambling for real. And if that's the case, just because you say that this is fake, if it's not fake and you're raking in 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, and you are not jumping through all the hoops that all the other online casinos in the United States have to jump through, then you have an issue and you have a problem. And this lawsuit is a way for all of a sudden everybody to be talking about that you are violating the rules and the laws of this country and other countries.
And through the course of discovery, if they have to open the books and show what's really going on, that could be a problem. Now, again, these are allegations, statements to defend themselves. I do want to get into, once we get into that framework, how it's established, how the lawsuit then comes to Drake and Ross. Okay, so according to the file, both of these men were allegedly paid promoters of the online casino. So the complaint alleges that they live streamed gameplay sessions, that they posted giveaways, and presented themselves as actively betting what they have, all while encouraging fans to do the same, but that might not be the case. So the plaintiffs claim there's a crucial detail that viewers weren't told. The lawsuit alleges, quote, though Drake and Ross purported to be gambling with their own online casino cash, it was in fact provided to them by the house. So in other words, the complaint claims that the gambling that audiences saw wasn't truly personal risk. They looked real enough to influence viewers into wagering their own money, but that wasn't the case. That they were being falsely misled. Now, Mauricio, how do they know that? How do the plaintiffs, how can they prove that?
Well, I mean, they could prove that many ways. They can prove that through the side of the online casino, because whatever people really bet or lost in real money, that has to be kept in the records of the actual online casino. It has to be actually kept by whatever email correspondence or whatever transaction existed between Drake and the online casino. So it's not something that can be disproven. Now, I know this because I used to represent a UFC fighter, and at one point I believe that Drake wagered a large sum on his behalf, and it was a large sum, and he wasn't even favored. And I think my nephew was the one that told me, man, that's fake. You know, like my nephew told me, don't believe that. He's not really betting on his money. Now I don't know if he did or not, but they could be assuming it because we're talking about large amounts of money on underdogs that people could say, you know, he's got a lot of money, but I don't see him putting up that type of money. So right. I don't know if it's assumed or if it's known.
Would a defense be, hey, it was my own cash, or B, you know, it was clear I was making a joke, I was clear, or I was not having people rely on what I was doing. Is that a defense?
Both. Now, the first one is a good defense. That was my own cash is a great defense. I'm assuming that they're not going to be able to use that because I doubt that it really was his cash. I think he's too smart with his money historically to do that. And then the second one, yeah, but advertisers should not really, think that what I say is true or that's a weaker argument because you're really cannonballing yourself into what the plaintiff is saying. When you are a celebrity, you have an obligation to the public to say things that are true. And anytime that there's any type of defamatory lawsuit, truth is always going to be a defense. Truth is a defense to slander. Truth is a defense to libel.
Okay, so from there, the lawsuit broadens its scope because the plaintiffs allege that this online casino didn't just function as a gambling platform, but this is the main part, but also as a money-moving system through an internal feature called tipping. So according to the complaint, this allowed users, including Drake and Ross and Wayne, to send large sums of money to one another directly inside the platform. The filing describes the tipping system as, quote, an unlimited and wholly unregulated money transmitter that appears to exist outside the oversight of any financial regulator. The plaintiffs allege that money moved through the online casino's tipping system is then used to fund artificial streaming activities, sometimes called botting, with the goal of inflating Drake's streaming numbers, manipulating algorithms, and amplifying online narratives. The complaint alleges, through the online casino's tipping function, defendants have financed their combined artificial streaming to create fraudulent streams of Drake's music, fabricate popularity, disparage competitors and music label executives, distort recommendation algorithms, and distribute financing for all of the foregoing while concealing the flow of funds. And the lawsuit points to specific examples that it says support that claim, including this apparent large public tip between Drake and Ross, a major large money giveaway by Drake in partnership with Ross and the online casino, and even how days before this complaint was filed, they allege Drake gave Ross, allegedly, a $220,000 car as a gift. And the plaintiffs argue these transactions weren't random, but part of a broader pattern. Now, Mauricio, that connective tissue is very interesting, because then, if that's true, you're talking about a real-life effect. You're talking about inflating streaming numbers, which can have a financial advantage to the players at a financial disadvantage to other players. But that connectivity is really, really interesting, that alleged connectivity. What stands out to you about it?
Well, first of all, if they're making these allegations as lawyers, it's got to be based on something. So that's the most interesting thing. Like, they're just not just saying this. They just can't be saying this. There has to be something that they have, some evidence that they have that this is true. In my understanding of the rules of ethics, you just can't be throwing stuff on the wall to see what sticks. There has to be some basis. Now, the issue with this is that there is connectivity to the lawsuit, but this can open up the door to many other lawsuits with other people that have been damaged by this type of artificially inflating viewerships. Now, you're going to see a lot of other artists that are going to be out there saying, hey, you know what, like, you know, I've suffered with this, you know, like, my album, you know, should have had more viewership. I should have gotten this contract. I should have gotten this record deal, and I didn't. These numbers that are artificially, you know, inflated. Now, lawyers like this, when dealing with people like Drake and this online casino, you know, there could be a counter lawsuit. So you got to be, you know, careful of the allegations that you made, and that's why I'm assuming that they have to have some basis to bring this lawsuit forward.
But I guess the question, the defense from Drake would be, I'm Drake. Of course, people are going streaming my music. Like, how are they going to prove that he's not?
I understand.
He's popular, right? You know.
Right. I get it. He's popular, but his popularity goes to the point. Like, I'm gonna get married in a week. My wife had a Drake song on our list, and I looked at it and I said, "Babe, I'm gonna veto it just because of, you know, best I ever had, best I ever had, best I ever had." Like, they played it so much that it causes something in my mind. Like, so it's like Drake is played so often, so repetitive that it questions, is it artificial or not? Why do we hear his songs so often?
By the way, are you getting married in a week? Are you getting married in a week? Oh, yes, congratulations. Yes. Oh, so you learned a little bit of, we learned a little Mauricio Padilla trivia in the middle of this. All right, so maybe Drake.
No Drake at the wedding.
No Drake at the wedding after this. Okay, so all of that leads to why this case is framed